Hello everyone, happy Monday. Jackie Broman here from TBA Law with my Monday Facebook Live. So I try and come in here every Monday and give a short snippet of legal information. All the videos are then saved to the page, so you can go back in the video section on our Facebook page and check all those out. A lot of the videos I've done have been on wills and estate planning and deceased estate administration because that's my area of specialty. However, TBA Law also does a whole lot of work in the area of property law, and so I have done a series on buying and selling real estate and what the conveyancing process is. Then I did a short series of 4 about living in the community and what obligations we have living in the community with our neighbours. And at the moment I'm on a short series of 5 videos on leasing. So you can go back and have a look at the last couple of videos. Hi Sammy. I did them on the perspective of a tenant in terms of leasing, and I did it from both residential tenancy and retail leasing as well. This episode and next week's video, I'm doing it from a perspective of a landlord. So today the topic is landlord's rights and obligations during a tenancy, and next week I'll focus on the landlord ending a lease. So one of the main rights obviously of a landlord is to be paid. So they own a property, they've provided it as a lease for someone, they've got a right to be paid the rent that's in the agreement. They've also got a right to have certain outgoings paid for as well, so long as they're disclosed. With residential tenancy, it's very different from retail. So a residential tenant just has to pay their own usage fees. They don't have to pay rates, they don't have to insure the property, they just have to insure their contents. They just have to pay, what they're using for phone, electricity and gas, etc. In a retail situation, a lot more outgoings are passed on by the landlord to the tenant. So the landlord passes on their building insurance, so the tenant has to pay that. The landlord passes on the rates and the water rates so that the tenant also pays those. The only outgoing that a retail tenant doesn't pay is land tax. So everything else can be passed on by the landlord. So that's the main obligation and right that a landlord has, is to be paid. So what does a landlord have to do during a tenancy? So they have to provide their tenant with quiet enjoyment, which is a legal term, and there's a whole lot of precedent about what that means. But basically they have to let the tenant use the property and not come around and check on them all the time. Under residential tenancy, a landlord has to give notice before they come and inspect a property, and they're only able to inspect a property on certain things happening, like needing a valuation. If the property's sold, they're able to do 6 monthly inspections otherwise, but a notice has to be provided because a tenant doesn't have to let a landlord onto the premises. They've got possession of it during the tenancy. From a retail perspective, a landlord also has to provide quiet enjoyment and just let the tenant get on with their business. They can inspect the property. There's less rules and obligations around it. It's in the lease itself. It's not in the Retail Leases Act like it is in the Residential Tenancies Act. So you can work that out negotiating with your landlord, or the landlord themselves can negotiate it with their tenant how often they want to inspect. So there are some of the rights. Another thing is maintenance. So an obligation on a landlord. Again, under residential and under retail leasing, it's very different. Under a retail lease, a whole lot of maintenance is pushed onto the tenant, so they have to maintain the property. They have to do all maintenance except for if there's some structural issues, and then the landlord does those. It's the flipped, complete opposite with a residential tenancy. So the tenant doesn't have to do maintenance at all. It is an obligation on the landlord to do that. The tenant will only do maintenance if it's an emergency and they've contacted the landlord and the landlord hasn't done anything. So as a landlord, you're obliged to act promptly when there's issues of maintenance to do with your property. Now, from a management perspective, particularly residential tenancies, please get a property manager. You won't want to be managing it yourself, more than likely. That is the purpose of a real estate agent. Get them to do the management of it. They will calendar, date everything that needs to happen. They'll do the inspections. They'll do the condition reports. They'll deal with the tenant. It removes you from the process. With a retail lease, it's less likely that you need to give that to a real estate agent. But bear in mind that whilst TBA law does help people prepare a retail lease, we certainly don't manage the lease. It is the obligation of the landlord to keep in mind what dates they have during the lease and what their obligations are. TBA law does not do property management. So there you go, some rights and obligations for landlords during a tenancy. If you believe this will be of any interest to anyone, I'll post the video onto Facebook after I finish live, and you can tag anyone in it if you need to. Otherwise, like I said, every Monday I come into Facebook and do a short live snippet of information, and next Monday it's going to be on landlords ending a tenancy. So, hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a really great week. Catch you next Monday.